Engage Barrie started a campaign called If You Don't Run, Who Wins? It is aimed at encouraging people, especially people of color and women, to run, people of color and also people from LGBTQ plus community to run in order to increase the participation in local politics and especially in the council, which is scheduled to go for voting later this year. So I have with me a panel of 3 people who have been associated with Engage Barrie. Some of them have been running the campaign and some of them have run in the past in order to increase the participation. And so I'm going to talk to them today to understand more about the campaign and importance of diversity in local politics. Welcome everyone. I want to start with Rob about the campaign. So you have been, one of the persons behind the campaign. If you don't run, who wins? So I want to know what is the idea behind this campaign and how did it start?
Sure. Well, first of all, I have to give credit to Alyssa Wright because she came up with the slogan of "If you don't run, who wins?" Which I think was brilliant. And I think Engage Barrie has always been about getting people involved with their community, right? And getting people involved in politics and running. So the campaign has always kind of existed in the background. We've just kind of put a face to it and a slogan. So it's really important for us to encourage as much diversity as possible on council.
And how long you have been running this campaign, particularly this year? When did it start, and what kind of response have you been getting?
It started at the beginning of August. I think it's always a challenge with municipal politics because the window to sign up is pretty large, and people are thinking about it. Could we have started earlier? I think if we had the great slogan, we would have. We had always been encouraging people from the beginning, but really, it came together in the last few weeks to try to get people to sign up because we looked at who was signing up and who was running, and there were definitely wards where people would have just gotten in uncontested, or school trustees as well. I think people don't realize, that those positions are open and available, and so we thought it was good to get awareness out there so that, hey, if you have any interest in this, you should consider running.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I was reading on your Instagram. So since you started this campaign, there are more and more people who have come forward, and some of the wards who were supposed to go uncontested, now they have some candidate, but we still have at least 2 wards, ward number 5 and ward number 7, where the incumbent is don't have anybody else running. So incumbent, they're likely to win uncontested. So I want to talk to Shannon a little bit about the campaign. As a person of color, as a woman, we don't have we have. The last council had only 2 women, Councillor Anne-Marie Kangal and Natalie Harris. Natalie Harris, we don't know if she's going to run again. She hasn't, decided. So if she doesn't, then, there could be 1 or, no woman left in the council. And we don't have any, woman of color in the council. So how important? So if you don't mind, if you could talk a little bit about your background in professional life in politics, and why do you think it's important to have more women of color in politics, in local politics especially?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been in Barrie for a really long time, as a mom and raising my family here, and it's very interesting as a female and as a person who identifies as being of color as well. You know, I don't always think about my color, to be honest with you. I just think about how I can make a difference. I don't think about being female unless it's to empower others as well. But there is that need, and there is that void. So I look at it as that gap needs to be filled. So I have been a very outspoken leader and community advocate as well for a very long time, well over 20 years. And, you know, I recognize where my voice can be lent in terms of being an empowered woman, and of course, you know, a person with you know, multicultural and diversity as well, because I face racism of all sides. So where I see it, I also think, you know, it's a double-edged sword when you look at it in ways of being at one point where I was a wife, being a mother, being in the sandwich generation where I'm a caregiver as well with my family. And there's that challenge. And of course, running my business. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not just a standard Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 individual. I also have a business to run and a team. So if you look at it from that aspect, you know, when you look at statistically how it is for women as well, you know, we've got all those responsibilities added to it, but representation matters. You know, we need to have our voices around those tables. You know, here's a perfect example. I had a skiing accident back in 2016 and I couldn't walk. And I had accessibility challenges. And it was only when I recognized in my community, whether it was parking, whether it was stores, you know, you only know what you know. So when you experience something, that's when the penny drops for you and you're like, oh, you know. But if you're a person of privilege, however that looks to you, and I'm like the last person to ever be derogatory or anything, you know, I just really want equality. I just really want eyes open for our generation, for future generations, to make a difference. And as you can tell, I'm very passionate about it. What I love about Engage Barrie is we are individuals bridging that gap and trying to provide support for those people who are looking at it. And also because we're nonpartisan, you know, we're looking at it from the municipal point of it, of get involved. And so many times, I don't know about, you know, my colleagues here, but when you're on social media and you see under the media postings, and sometimes, you know, people are just so quick to interject and provide their comments, and they just read the headline and they don't read the meat, you know, that's behind the headlines. Read what, and they're just so quick to judge. They're so quick to react. I mean, even when, you know, Shanika, God bless her, decided that she was going to run. I mean, oh my gosh, the comments, well, you know, she's just a community leader. Like, what does she know? And I don't normally engage in comments, but I said, you know, by all means, run. If you don't, like, good on whoever wants to put their name forward, because they are not complaining. They are trying to be a solution to a problem and to a challenge that we have throughout our city. And, you know, as much as I experience it, I didn't realize it until my children moved out of the city and went, well, Mom, the city of Barrie really needs to change. It's, you know, I live in Toronto now. I see all the diversity and inclusion, and Barrie is still a very close-knit community. So I won't monopolize the time, but as you can see, I have an opinion.
No, it's important. It's very important to have, you know, an opinion. And, you know, you talked about, you know, Barrie being very conservative city. You know, I lived in Mississauga before moving to Barrie, and Mississauga have, you know, a woman mayor, and, you know, before that I was living in Boston, and Boston recently had, you know, a first woman, you know, person of color mayor that Boston elected, and I can see, you know, since I moved it's little under a year now since I moved to Barrie, and I see the conservative the vibe in Barrie, though it's in last since the pandemic it's becoming more diverse. So I would, my next question is for Myrna, that you ran in the past in one of the elections, I believe in 2015, and it's challenge, even though for a woman who is white, there are challenges in Barrie. It's as Shannon said, she doesn't, when she's thinking about the community, she doesn't think about her color or her gender, but people who vote, they do. So that's the challenge, and you have to overcome that challenge. So what has been your experience in that sense, and what do you think can be done more?
Hi, and I'm not up to speed exactly, but yes, I have been a candidate in Barrie 4 times, 3 times federally, 1 time provincially, for a party that has only won once, which means my vote, my whole adult life has only counted once. So I'm a big proponent of electoral reform. And having said that, I grew up in Toronto, so I was accustomed to a global village. And when I came to Barrie, friends would visit sometimes and say, we'd go for coffee or lunch, and they'd say, is this ever a white community? But I'd already had children who, I'm a grandparent, and this is home. I have 1 son still in Toronto. But I felt the conversation was important, and the policies of the party that I stand for were important. And so, I mean, I had somebody say at the end of one of the elections, if you'd run for us, the party that won, I guess it was 2015, the Liberals, you probably would have won. I said, yeah, but that wasn't what I was running for. Those weren't the principles I was running for. And I think also I've been an activist since high school in many ways. In university, there was the Vietnam War. And even though we were Canadian, there was a professor who was from Great Britain. And we had a march in Peterborough, Ontario, that's white, pretty much like Barrie, against the war. And back in high school, one of the teachers had a colleague who'd gone to the South in the summer holidays, like I can't remember, Mississippi or Alabama, to sign up Black people to vote. I was stunned. I had no idea Black people couldn't vote in the United States. And the other atrocities that he mentioned were still going on in 1965 in the American South. And I think ever since then, I just had to be aware of what the world around me is doing. I mean, I've got friends and a big family and all of that, but I just think we are part of a global village. And so back to the municipal part, I have watched council for a number of years, and we've had some good years and some not so great years for people in general, so there are issues, I don't know if that's going to come up in this conversation, that I think it's just too lopsided in the direction of development, never environmental policies with any teeth. And the diversity issue is getting a little bit better in Barrie. I mean, my next door neighbors now are from they're from Pakistan, and they're lovely. But when they first came, they went to Montreal, so they're trilingual. They speak English, French, and they told me, and I forget the language. But anyway, my kids say I get on a soapbox. I feel very strongly that we need to see our place in the global village. And so if it's municipal right now, we have a great lack of people with that kind of vision, like, yes, you have to pay attention to local waterways or, what is happening. But at the same time, those waterways link to the greater waterways, and the climate emergency is an emergency. And so I'd like to see more of that. But Barrie has done some very good things, and I think that's wonderful. I don't know, does that answer the question?
No, yeah, it does. It does. And, you talked about, various aspects. One of them is diversity, and that's what I want to get Rob's opinion as well. And because there are some issues, if you haven't experienced, if you haven't had those experiences, lived experiences, you don't understand,
Right.
those particular issues. And then there are actions being taken by people who are in power, and they have that blind spot, and they don't understand that, and they keep on trying to find some solutions, and then they wonder why things are not working.
Mhm.
So that's what I when I looked at the campaign, I see people from different color women in that campaign, and that what struck me was honestly, I didn't think that graphics was would have been made by a white man, but when I saw that, that's so I that gave me another, that was my blind spot, that that only people of color are working to have the diverse political disclosure. But then, so Rob, how did you I don't know if you lived in Barrie or what kind of background you had, but why did you think it was important to have different people represented in those graphics? Because there are council seats where nobody's running. So even if there is another white male running, that also a good for the city. So why that?
Yeah, I think so. I'm obviously the privileged white male here, and and I don't deny that my status, my path in life has been very much affected by my race, my color. My parents, my mom came from Poland. She grew up during the war. So it's interesting. There's a lot of sense of what the immigrant story is in my past and coming here, and that, Polish people were viewed differently when they came here. Every time there's a new set of immigrants coming to the country, they're always viewed differently. So there is a bit of that side of, I grew up hearing the immigrant story, which I think really helped me a lot. I was a pretty avid reader when I was a kid, and my parents encouraged that. And I think reading a lot of different stories and hearing a lot of different views really sort of brings awareness of, it's not just me in the world. It's not just my perspective. I grew up in St. Catharines, very white community. We weren't very diverse. I remember the one Black kid we had in school. So that, so again, very monoculture. But I went to U of T. So Toronto, very diverse culture. But I didn't feel like I was at a place there. I think, again, because of the experience I had from my parents growing up and talking about a more worldly perspective, it felt very natural and comfortable. Coming here to Barrie, it did feel a little odd when we first moved here in '96. It's like, okay, this is very different than Toronto. But every time I listen to people or get stories from people from other cultures or people who have traveled, I traveled a little bit, not as much as I would like, you always learn something. So to me, it's really natural to think the more people we have telling our stories and sharing their perspective, the more important it is. Even like Shannon said, the whole disability aspect, right? Like and accessibility. It's like, until you hear that story, you don't know what the problems are. Or if we had somebody on council who came from a different social economics perspective, you don't have to be Black or LGBTQ. If you come from a different story of, you have a poverty that has affected you, your challenges in life are completely different. And we need to hear what those were and how you deal with them, so that as a community, we can find ways to help each other out. I think that was really the impetus behind the visuals for that, is that there's a lot of stories to tell. Let's hear them all. Age as well too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's yeah. Thank you. That's one of the things I did not mention. And even in terms of the participation, in when it comes to local politics, council or school uh, district, there is less participation from people compared to provincial and the federal election. So though there is a lot of important decision making is made at the local level, people do not feel it's important to participate in. And one of the a few instances in last year, couple of years, were racism in school district. In one of the women whose daughter, she was black. Her daughter was targeted in school when she complained. She did not get a positive response from the school district. It was kind of oh, these are just boys, they do these things, but they use n-word, and kind of encouraging, kind of messages that encouraging her to commit a suicide and kill herself. So that's very disturbing. So but we do not know what happened to that case. There is kind of secrecy. And I remember some time back, Keenan, Councillor Alvin raised some policing issue on his Twitter, and there was a backlash from the council that let police do their work. It's their job to do work. We are not supposed to participate and dictate them what should be done. This has also come up in the council that this is not the jobs of council. Council job is only to give money, and police should police should police themselves the way they see fit. So I just want to turn to Shannon, that can there be changes done in local politics, in decision making, without participation of people of color, especially indigenous and black people. Like I'm originally from India, but I see when it comes to discrimination, black and indigenous people face it much more than say Indian or South Asian or other communities.
Well, I always like to be on the side of hope, that with people being woke, I guess is the term, and with allyship and reconciliation are all important tools. And it is so much more than just putting a solid block, a black heart or an orange block on your social media profile. It is getting involved, it's educating yourself. And, as a person who does identify as color, it is not my responsibility to educate you, because I have my own things that I have to deal with. And even though I said earlier, I may not recognize it, I don't have to think of, like, I don't wear it on my sleeve. Like I'm aware how different I am. I'm aware of my privilege and also the racism that I face. Right. I recognize that. And, thank you, Georgian College, for your education. If I'm well spoken, it's all those different things, but it's only when people receive me in a negative way. Right. And when I recognize, oh, right, I can't forget that I am this person standing here as a female and a person of color. So in answer to your question, I would like to say hope. However, all the systems and policies and procedures are just repeating history. They are all based on, matriarchal systems. They are all based on, privilege. They are all based on those people who have not walked the walk that we have. They don't know. So unless they are very proactive and not fearful of speaking up, that's kind of one of the things that I noticed in the past council. Or let me just keep a blank slate. The challenge when people are elected is that they'll say anything and everything they possibly can. And then you get in, and then it's the majority, and then it's the buddy system. So whether you have, one female, then she can speak up based on her experience, but then she's, one voice against 9 men or all those other individuals of privilege, which is why we are speaking up and saying, listen, this is a great start, but we need more. Representation matters, diversity matters, because we need to change these systems and policies that are already implemented. And if it's just one voice on council and the other people don't recognize it because they come from privilege, then the change really, in my opinion, is not going to be very, very effective. Everything from whatever decision is being made, whatever policy, no matter how big or how small, impacts the whole community as a whole.
Yeah, you're right. And this reminds me, some of the initiatives that are being, discussed in the council, outgoing council. And one of that was about, housing crisis and homelessness. So the people we have, on council, I remember, one of the discussion, one of the councillors said, that she, I don't remember whether it's a male or female, but the councillor said, that they have been, facing the housing issue themselves. And dealing with trying to find an apartment, and how to stay afloat, because we all know that you are maybe 1 or 2 paycheck away from getting homelessness. There's so much high, rent is so high in Barrie. There's so much housing crisis still going on. But if let's say homelessness, homeless people, or people who are facing housing crisis, they are not part of the decision making, then we have people who are very comfortable, which are most of them are middle-aged white men on the council that we see, and they don't understand that particular problem, unless it's not only about having diverse council, but it's also about reaching out to diverse group of people in the city, and trying to hear their opinion, for example. And if you see the list of people running for the mayor, they're all male. Like, we don't have a single woman running for a seat of mayor. And so
And I want to put it out there. I would totally love to run. I would be that individual to put my money where my mouth is. Don't get me wrong. I love the system. I would love to change the status quo. I would love to run. I even sought out a campaign manager many years ago for my ward, because I didn't want my councillor to be acclaimed. I didn't want them to kind of sit on their laurels. I would love to. I've been so involved in this community, and definitely I'm not afraid to put my name out there. The challenge is, and we talked about this before we started the interview, the challenge for someone like me is I'm in the sandwich generation. We just coming out of pandemic. I run a business. You have to be like, I have no problem being a leader, but it's 4 years of commitment. And how do I run a business? How do I run my family? How do I help care for my aging parents? How do I do all those things? Which is why I get involved in another way. And this is why I love, again, the Engage Barrie platform and the Women in Politics, so we can help educate those who are like, oh, maybe there is an opportunity for me to make a difference. So I see, at least I recognize that about myself, but that's where I think it's unfair, because women carry, you can say what you want, but statistically, women carry a lot of it, whether they're moms, whether they're grandmothers, whether they're wives, whether they run their business, whether they're employees. So the scales are really not in our favor, in my opinion, for us to run, to encourage us. Gosh, look at all the council meetings that you have to do. Look at the committees that you have to be part of. Are you a mom? Do you have to arrange daycare? Do you have to go for Canada Day? Do you have to do those events? Do you have to do openings? It is so much. And I'm not trying to discourage anyone. In fact, we want to encourage, but how we're talking about systems and policies. how can we change that so it's less male dominated? And no offense to the men's out there, because I know that they can also be caregivers and their parents as well. But if you think about it, who picks up the responsibility the most? So how can we make that change, and how can we make that difference are the key factors so we can get more women to run, period. How can we make it easier for them to run?
Yeah,
I think even the fact that council is not a full-time position, right, is a factor. So financially, that's a factor for people. So, you know, it is a challenge, like you say, to inspire people to run, because the same thing. Well, okay, first of all, I'm not going to run because I'm another older white guy, so we don't need another one of me on council. But I totally relate to all the issues that Shannon is pointing out. Of, you know, they're older kids, but I still have kids at home going through university. You know, and there is that challenge of, you know, the pandemic, I think, has thrown a loop for some people with time-wise. So people always look at that and go, how do I, you know, balance that time? I think a lot of ways it's like, just the encouragement of the campaign is that if you thought about running, if you have any interest in running and you think you can find the time, don't let other factors, you know, determine that you're not going to run. Don't say, well, you know, I'm not really well known in the community. You know, I don't have as much money, so I can't have a big campaign. It's like, you have a voice, and even running and sharing that voice. And I think it's also important that people have the right to complain, in the sense that they have the right to voice their opinions to their counselors. So even if you come out of this going, you know what, I'm not ready to run yet, but I'm ready to talk to my counselor, and I'm ready to share my opinion and my perspective in the thing. That's important, right? That's engaging in you don't have to be running, but it's great to be engaging, letting your counselor know how you feel and what's important to you.
Forgive me, and I maybe should know this. You know how counselors, at least if you ran for mayor, you would have a full-time job and an expense account that would pay for childcare. Not all the incidentals, but it supports you more than, as Rob's saying, part-time. Can counselors claim childcare as an expense like they can for mileage? Do any of us know that? And if
I
not,
don't know off the top of my head.
that needs to be issue from the get-go. That's a legitimate expense. I've been on committees sometimes and volunteer, and I could claim childcare if I needed to when I was younger and involved in things. I like how, Rob, you put stories, and another term people use is lived experience. And so we need, you know, to piggyback on Shannon's talk also, people at a table that have lived experience. So when the issue of the safe consumption site came up, for instance, there was actually a very credible, intelligent person who had the lived experience of being an addict in recovery, had been on the street, all of that. And he made a very, I don't know if anybody were, I don't know, Rob, if this was when it first came before council. I think the Liberals were in power provincially, and we could have gotten funding to start this safe consumption site. But the council voted it down. They didn't listen to our medical officer of health and his assistant, who both said how it would save money. And, you know, we've been going at it as a city for, I don't know, it might be 4 years now. It was way before COVID. I can't remember. But again, back to getting more women, I don't know. That's a question, you know, to ask whether who would know that, Service Barrie or someone, so that we can give that information to any females that are running. You can claim childcare. You can claim transportation, even if you're taking TTC or a taxi. These are small things. It's not a full-time job. And I guess that'll get declared down the road as Barrie grows. But, you know, the lived experience is so important. So around homelessness, around, if you're a school trustee, so you're a parent in the community, and ideally, you know, there were those 2 incidents within the last 12 months. One was in Innisfil, where a kid, you know, it was racially why she was bullied, and her mother brought it to the public's attention, and thank goodness she did. And I think we need to do more of that. Instead of, there seems to be this notion in Barrie, oh, we don't talk about that. That don't let that hit the papers. Instead of, it may hit the papers, but here's what we're going to do about it. And so we need to encourage people like Shannon, I wish she still lived in Barrie, but who will speak to things and have the courage to speak to things, And I'm very sad Keenan's not running again, and I can only guess why. Like, he brought so many important things to the table, and he suffered not just condemnation from other councillors, but from the community. And that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
A place like Toronto, if they heard that, we should be ashamed of ourselves. As somebody with the credibility and intelligence, and he was young when he started, he's learned a whole lot. He's not running again. And that makes me very sad. We need him.
Yeah, I remember like when I read some of the comments when about the news on Facebook about him, and I was shocked at the comments, especially coming from some of them coming from women, and those were very homophobic and very offensive comments, and I was shocked. I was like, how? And the reaction to that comments, people are encouraging that particular person and applauding her for those comments. And Rob, you talked about we don't need another white man, and I feel not just any other white man, but we need good white men as well. And I think that's what problem is. I think.
I'm so glad you said that, because as he said that, I cringed, because it goes back to a question. It goes back to a question you asked me earlier. Again, we need adversaries. You're going to advocate for us, even though we're talking about diversity and inclusion. And this is what makes me sad, is this is the great divide. Yes, I need to see that representation. It matters, because I need to see that I can also be a person who can affect change. But if you're going to be a man who's going to get voted in because your platform is more successful than mine, that's why I advocate for equality. I want equality all across the board. I don't give a crap, really, about, well, that's not true. I do care who gets in there. But if you get in there and you are the successful one who's going to advocate for me, that and you were voted for, then thank you. I really want to see the day where we're just so far behind, but it's not there yet for equality, that it doesn't matter whether it's a man or female or however they identify, non-binary, or person of BIPOC, Indigenous, but we're not there yet, and that's why we have to have these conversations. So it's unfortunate that you feel that way. I mean, I understand, because again, we're talking about representation, but just continue to walk and be a mentor and inspire and lead other individuals then who can, take your guidance until we can get there, until we can have full inequality, which we don't have.
Thank you for that.
We need you.
And I think we have people on council who represent that. There are people there. I think, like you say, that's one of the reasons I'm involved in Engage Barrie, because it's some ways I can contribute back. And even making those diverse ads, like you said, they were created by somebody who's white, but they had it's also, that's a little bit of, if you're running for council, maybe you will go on uncontested, but think about your community. Maybe even that awareness of, who is in your community? Are these people in the community? If you see the ad and think, oh, these people are in my community, I should consider them. I think that's important. I agree that I think ultimately also, whether you're liberal or conservative, you can be conservative. You can have conservative values, but still, I don't like the boxes of, you have to be one or the other, because you could come into council and go, you know what, fiscally, it doesn't make sense for us to do this. Even though I want to do this, we can't because there are other responsibilities. And that, I think that's the challenge of councils. You always are balancing so many things. But if you can even acknowledge the issues that are and say, I'm sorry, we can't do this now, but can we start looking into doing this? And those are big steps, I think.
No, they
Here's the
are.
thing about municipal politics, that if somebody is watching your show right now and they don't know or understand, again, municipal politics is nonpartisan. It doesn't matter how you vote in the provincial or federal elections at all. You are community minded. And I'm just going to give my opinion that you can clearly see who represent who in terms of blue and red and anything else that is out there. And I personally don't want to see that in my community leaders who are supposed to be representing our community in our wards. That should not be taking any precedent when you're sitting as councillors and mayor representing the city of Barrie, or any city, in my opinion. And you can, and anyone can go back and watch past council meetings or whatever. I'm not passing any judgment on it. You can see for yourself. And that is not representing the community, in my opinion.
Yeah, though it's, supposed to be non-partisan, at least I have noticed that at least 50% of the councillor you can see with either the Liberal candidates or with the Conservative candidates. So there's still that ideological divide. But I agree with Rob, is it doesn't matter, what you are, how you vote, if it comes to, any fiscal responsibility. But there are some issues, that you need to work together. And this, one of the last things I want to talk about is this tweet. And this again going back to Rob's point about we don't need more white men, which I not agree. I think we do need, who champion, as Shannon said, who champion the causes that is important to people of color, that is the causes that are important to LGBTQ community. And so this tweet, Keenan Alwyn tweeted this last month about a councillor, saying this councillor has been found to have sexually harassed a city employee by an independent third-party investigator. He's completely unfit to be mayor of Barrie for this and so many other reasons. So this I think this issue talks, and I'm not passing any judgment about. I think there is still some civil case that is still to come in the court, but he's talking about that has been an independent and third party investigator, so that has been found. So this talks about why we need white men, if they have ability and people can vote them into power. And this also talks about why there has to be more concern about women. If a woman in Barrie's how undergoes this trauma, she needs more support, and there should be some consequences from the council. And I think there's some discussion underway that if somebody is found to be violated some ethics, or found to have sexually harassed someone, banning them from running, or ejecting them out of the council. So these issues talk about both why we need good people despite of their their gender orientation. At the same time, we also need more women to champion these causes. So as a last comment, in light of this tweet, and in general, this is next is the last week to file the nomination. So what would you want to say to encourage more people to come up and participate? Anybody can start.
So first of all, for covering all of our butts, it's alleged. But as a woman personally, as a woman survivor, now thriver as well, when I hear about things like that, it is the intimidation factor. And it's very unfortunate because it really does, like, you know, this is a workplace problem, right? But it's also all of the community. And I know I was interviewed before, you know, saying where HR should have been involved and so on and so forth. But, you know, when for example, when I see postings for the city of Barrie, and I think, well, I wouldn't want my daughter to work there, because is it safe for her? You know, she's in her 20s. Is it safe for her? What would she be subjected to? For anyone, you know, this is any workplace, right? But it's just so important that that women feel safe and heard in any situation like that. And especially if they are going to be leaders on council or running for mayor, or, you know, it starts from the top. You know, being a mayor, you are the representative of our city, and all your people underneath you or your team members, they need to feel safe. You need to create that atmosphere where everyone knows that they are valued, that they feel safe, that they feel heard, that they matter, you know, in all aspects of anywhere. And the city of Barrie and the corporation are the top corporation showing the way for other businesses and other people in our area. And that's really what it is, bottom line, regardless of who this is or what happens. And that again comes from policies, you know, like what Myrna said earlier, you know, about, you know, something so simple about daycare. Well, you know, man or woman, has that crossed anyone's mind, you know, as the men are sitting around the table, or do they have really amazing supportive partners that allows them to do what they need to do? So who's going to do that for the other side as we're encouraging females to run, right?
Or for the single dad who wants to run. Right?
Well, that's why I said it doesn't matter, right? Yeah. Like it's, you know, anything. But at this point, we are trying to advocate for more females and representation to run. So again, until we get that equality, right, we're looking, that's what we're looking for right now. So how, you know, we just, please, anyone, reach out to Women in Politics, reach out to Engage Barrie. If you're curious about anything, if you don't think you can make a difference, come to us and how we can show you different ways of how you can support another candidate, or maybe, you know, school trustee or whatever, maybe something you didn't think about. You know, read everyone's platforms, you know, what do you believe in? But the most important thing right now is showing up to vote, to read. I mean, there's so much apathy. The statistics are staggering. And, you know, if you're especially immigration, especially you're relocating here from another city coming to Barrie, we just implore you, just don't be passive. Get involved, please, because every voice matters. Every voice matters.
Yeah,
every
does, yeah.
person, every vote matters. Thank you.
And it's not difficult to get involved. I mean, it's intimidating if you've never done it. Smaller ways to get involved that we can encourage people to do, as you said, Shannon. You know, go on the website of somebody who's running in your ward, and there'll usually be a thing like volunteer, donate. It can be as simple as talking to your neighbors and giving them a piece of literature. And that takes courage and that takes confidence. So just encouraging in our own world, you know, our neighbors, our friends, our family, you know, even if you can do this much, even if Obama started running for president with jars in the middle of a table in neighborhoods and people putting in, you know, a couple dollars, $5, that kind of thing. But it's so important, and politics are important, you know, people who say, I'm not into politics. And sometimes when I'd be knocking at a door and if I felt a little bit frustrated, I'd say, well, you know, do you like the hospital? Do you like the, you know, that we have a police force and military, we have schools, blah, blah, blah. you know, it matters. So we need to elect people who care about community and not just themselves.
We are here to try to encourage everyone to run, to look into, you know, whatever that is, however you can be of service, however it is that you want to make a difference. You know, we're here to just be that platform. And on a final note for me, I had tons of questions. Our education system at school, really not great, you know, to educate through that. And I outsourced again through Women of Politics, and I'm a very proud woman. I'm, you know, again, a business owner. And by working with that individual, they never made me feel stupid for any question that I had. And they helped me sort out the difference between municipal, provincial, and federal. So there's no question too big or too small, and don't have ego, don't be too proud, ask the questions, understand. And, you know, it's so wonderful because there was a Women in Politics meeting that we had through their Barrie Business Women's AGM. And now Sharon, so now there's a candidate from that. And she went, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how, you know, I always thought it was really, really intimidating. So ask the questions, find out, and maybe there's a new platform, or maybe there's a new business or something, you know, that you're a new passion that you can find. You know, anybody who's already doing work through the community, maybe this is just another way for them to level up and help, and again, help make a difference. And
if they're not ready to step forward today, in 4 or 5 years, they've kind of dipped their toe in the water and you see a path.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the key. That's the message sort of Barrie Engage is always promoting. It's like, you may not be ready to run for council right now, and that's okay. But let's start with a vote. That's the simplest thing you can do, and because your voice matters. Then let's start with sharing your story, and that's very difficult for some people, and we appreciate that. And I think the big thing is, when people share their story, we need to be open to listen. And that's where, and if we're open to listen, people will exchange ideas. Think about, and I think, again, the community, Shannon, like you say, is like so important. It's like, that's a great stepping stone. And we get lost in the politics, the bigger world politics, and the stuff that's going on south of the border, and the stuff that's going on federal level. If you want to change your community, there's no better place to do that than at the municipal level. And it's not, and you can approach it, you can hopefully try to be agnostic from the different parties and say, what is best for my community? Let's start small. And I have a story to share. And like Myrna says, it might not be this year, but maybe 4 years from now, you'll be in a position where you're ready to share that story. And you've met people that are going to support you and have encouraged you with that story. I think that's all we can do is share each other's stories and listen.
Deepak,
Yeah.
I love your media, by the way. I do follow you. And there was one particular story where it's challenging for me because I work in real estate and investors, and with a lot of landlords. And there was your one particular story you were touching on with the female in the park who had been illegally evicted. And that story really touched my heart. And as much as I work with investors, I also try to educate them as well to make sure that they do things the right way. So I hope that you connect with me afterwards, because there's some tips that I want to be able to help that woman in particular. If they are illegally evicted and you can speak with them, and somebody goes to re-rent it within that year, they can actually go back to the tribunal. So I hope that they can help and help support now she's homeless because she was illegally evicted, and that's not through any fault of her own. And then some people, this is where I don't agree, that some people in council are trying to criminalize homelessness, and you want to find people who don't have something. I mean, that's where it just burns my butt. Like, that's what really irritates me. So please don't just tackle on homelessness and whatever just because it's some sort of platform. Believe in it, because people are going to see through your BS.
We need a ombudsman.
Exactly. So anyway, I just wanted to applaud you for the work that you do.
Thank you
in the
so much.
community, and thank you for asking us here today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Rob, Shannon, and Myrna. I really appreciate your time, and this has been a great discussion, and I hope to, continue this, after the election to see, what are the results, and if we have made any progress compared to the outgoing council. But thank you so again, thank you so much again all for your time. Have a nice day. Bye.